we've learned a lot because we had to do it on our own. We didn't have someone giving us inside secrets. And so I feel like that's where a lot of bloggers are at right now. They're like, I know people are doing something because they're working with brands, but what's the secret?
That was Carrian Cheney, and this is episode 75 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley, and I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. My goal is to share with you thoughts, stories, interviews, everything about food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today's guest on the show is Carrian Cheney of the site Oh Sweet Basil, and today we're talking about something a lot of bloggers love to talk about, the secret of working with brands. I've said this before, but sometimes I think it bears repeating. Blogging can feel like everybody else is in on a secret and you don't know what it is. It can be so frustrating sometimes. So if you've ever wondered how you can start working with brands so you can monetize your blog, or maybe you're already working with brands but you want to up your game, you are going to love today's discussion with Carrian, because not only are we talking about the specifics about working with brands, she goes into the differences for her on full rights versus partial rights and negotiation with brands. But she also talks about something I think is really important, which is really more about the mindset it took for her to get there. I think it's such an important perspective. In fact, I talked with Tiffany Angelis back in episode 72 about this very thing, the mindset of being an entrepreneur around the topic of money. So I think the fact that Carrian brought that up today and how it helped her with her approach in working with brands, I think is just another emphasis of the same point, which is really important. So I hope you love it. I can't wait to share it with you. But first, a quick word about the Chopped Conference. We are working hard to create a conference that's going to be an amazing experience for you. We have a lot of great speakers, such as Emma Chapman of A Beautiful Mess. And if you're curious about this whole Snapchat thing, Fee Kellenhofer will be there. She's with the site Sweet Fee, and she's going to be talking to you about Snapchat. And so you can be on the inside crowd with that topic. And don't forget the pre-conference workshop with Denise and Lenny. They're going to be talking about creating compelling food videos. Video on blogs is huge right now, and so you don't want to miss this. So go to choppedcon.com today and click on register. We can't wait to see you there. Also, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of you, especially those who've sent me emails, messages, tweets, reviews, comments on social media, and more. I am so glad to know you're loving the Chopped Podcast. It really means a lot. Doing a podcast can be a lot of work, but it's so worth it when we make those personal connections, and to know that this is a resource and providing a lot of value to the work that you're doing every day. I just can't tell you what that means. There is something that you can do to help the Chopped Podcast in return. Leaving a review on iTunes or Stitcher really makes a huge difference for the show. So I really appreciate if you could go to iTunes today and leave a review for the Chopped Podcast. Okay, let's get right to today's feature interview with Carrian Cheney. So put on those earbuds, turn up the volume, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Carrian Cheney of the site Oh Sweet Basil on the show today. Hey Carrian, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am so excited to have you, and I know we're going to talk about something that's really of interest to a lot of food bloggers, which is working with brands. But before we get into all of that, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that, caused you to start your blog?
Oh yeah, so it was totally by chance. We have been blogging, oh my goodness, I don't even know how long, 8 or 9 years now.
Wow,
forever in the blogging world. Yeah, that's a long time. So we actually went on a vacation to San Francisco, and we just really enjoyed our time there. And at one point we had this really fresh, amazing margarita pizza. And I know this sounds so silly, but while we were sitting around eating dinner, we were kind of talking about how the food was so good on this vacation, and we had just enjoyed it so much, and everything was so fresh. And it was like updated food from what we had grown up on. Not only did we have tacos, but they were better, fresher, and pizza was good, but it was better and fresher. And so when we were coming home, we just kind of were talking on the plane about how nice it would be if we came home and made it a goal to start trying new recipes together and kind of experimenting in the kitchen. And that kind of became our thing. My husband, Cade, and I just started cooking a lot together and inviting over, neighbors to try new things. And after a while, they would say, hey, could you email me the recipe for such and such? And I was just busy and kind of didn't have things pulled together, I guess, because I always flaked on them and just totally forgot to email the recipe over. And so after a while, I was like, hey, you guys, we're just going to open up this blog just for us so that we can post a recipe, and when you guys want it, it'll just be there and you can go look at it. And then random people all over the world started commenting, and we were like, hey, this is like a real thing.
Yeah.
I think this could be a business. So we kind of just took off from there, and it's our thing. Our family loves to cook together and be together, and it's been good for us as people too, just to kind of step away from the world and just laugh and be together and make memories. So kind of started from a vacation.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a great story. And is it true that, that statement, the couple that cooks together stays together?
It is true. Yeah. We have laughed about that so much because it seems so cheesy, but I don't know. I think it's because you put away everything else. It's just about food, and you enjoy it together. Yeah. There's nothing to stress you out about it. It's not about finances or anything like that. It's just about being together. And we did have to make a rule, I'll admit, in the beginning, because I would try a new recipe, and then I'd be like, what do you think? And sometimes he'd say, oh, it wasn't very good. And then I'd be like, oh, you didn't like it? So we had a rule. I would say, is it a recipe box recipe? In other words, is it a keeper? And he would say yes or no. And then I felt like it didn't hurt my feelings as much.
I like that. It. That's so good. So. Sometimes I would actually get the words, before the spoon was even up to my, his mouth. Yes. It's like, what do you think? You like it?
I know. They're like, let me try it.
Let me just swallow this first. And see.
I know.
I like that. I have a rating system with Sean and my daughter Addie too. I'll say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate it?
Yeah.
But I like the recipe box idea. That's even better because that lets you know, okay, this is worth work. It may still need some work, but it's worth it.
It's worth it. Exactly. Yes. And nobody gets hurt feelings because it's not about you. It's just about the recipe. And
you all do the blog together, right?
We do, yeah.
I love talking to other couples because my husband and I, we do our blog together too. So it's kind of fun when you've got that couple perspective. I think it really adds a lot.
Yeah. A lot of people have asked us about that, but we really work so well together. I'm sure you guys are the same. We do things different, of course, but it complements each other. And I do the photography. He does a lot of the recipes.
Nice.
So it's fun.
Well, I think for us, we had to learn to work well together. I mean, it's one thing to be married, it's another thing to work together, and we had to learn. We have two different styles. But what I find is that the more that we work well together, the more we work well together all the time.
It's so true. And you have to remember, okay, he's good at these areas.
Yes,
so build him up in those areas and don't concentrate on the bad. So
yes. And my other tip about working with your spouse is every night when I go to, my mom told me this, that you should never go to bed with bitterness in your heart. And so I try to just forgive my day every day. And sometimes that's me because I say stupid things, or maybe it's somebody else who says stupid things to me, or just whatever in the day that I just want to lay it down and be done with it. And so you have to forgive.
That.
Yes.
Just let it go.
Let it go.
Love that.
Start the day tomorrow fresh. And if it's still, if it happens again and you feel like you need to talk about it, that's different. Talk about it. But sometimes you got to choose your battles. But anyway.
You can't chase after every little thing. Yeah.
That's right. So I have to ask you this. So you had this trip to San Francisco. Have you always been interested in food?
I mean, as a little girl, I loved being in the kitchen with my mom. We always ate at home. We rarely ate out. And so I watched her cooking for 5 kids and all of that. Yeah, there was a lot of us.
Yes.
So I loved being in the kitchen, but it was really when I was older that things started to pick up, and I was like, this is kind of fun. And actually, when Kate and I were engaged, we both needed one more credit. And so we took a cooking class together, and it really grew then. We were like, hey, this is so fun. So
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And what about the food photography? Because you mentioned that you do that part. So is that something that
Oh,
you had to grow?
oh, I'm still growing. I have a lot of growing pains with photography.
Me
It's
too.
it's so hard.
I
It's
know.
and some people go natural, but I struggle. But I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Well, I think your photography is beautiful.
Oh, thank
Went
you.
on your site, just love it. But I think people don't realize the complicating factors is like the light is always changing in the day,
Yes.
let alone by season, and then the backgrounds that you
Exactly.
have, and then there's the styling. Oh, it's a
Right.
lot. It is a
And
lot.
food gets cold or it gets too
Yes.
warm, and so you're just working against the clock all the time. So,
It can be very stressful.
yes.
And does your husband have any feedback on the photography, or he's like, nope, that's your bailiwick?
That yeah, he wants to learn it, and sometimes I'll be like, "Okay, why don't you do this one?" And then I don't know if I'm a control freak or what, but the whole time I'm like, "Oh no, 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 not like that." And he's like, "Just go ahead." I'm like,
You do it.
"Okay, I'll take over."
Because I
I'm
wanted
trying
the
to let
berries
go.
over there, not over here.
Right, exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, you wouldn't really want to shoot that from above." He's like, "Oh, just do it."
I love it. That's so good.
He's a good sport.
Yeah, that's good. Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the reasons that we were planning to talk today is to talk about we're in a group together, and you had mentioned that you're working with brands in a way that's different than you used to. So I was hoping that you wouldn't mind sharing how you have historically been working with brands.
Well, let me start off by saying this. I know that the blogging world is tough. I've been in it a long time, from before it even was a thing. I mean, we used to just snap pictures of our dinner and be like, "Hey guys, look what I made. It's brown and gray." But I remember going to a little mini conference, and we were sitting in these round tables, and there was this blogger who was obviously doing well and really taking off, and someone asked her, "How do you work with brands? What is the secret?" And her answer was, "Well, I don't know what you mean. Don't you get like 10 or 11 emails a day? I'm just slammed with them." And that's how she left the answer. And I about died inside because I was just starting to turn this into a business. And I felt stomped all over. I felt
Yes.
embarrassed. I felt like, what am I doing wrong? I felt like just the scum of the earth because she
Yes.
answered it in such a way that was like, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing. They just come to me." And so I went home and told Kate, and Kate was like, "You know what? You can't get your feelings hurt about that because we are doing everything that we can to grow this. And if ever the opportunity comes that we can share our knowledge with others, then we will do it because we're in this together. This is something bloggers should collaborate and not compete on."
Yes.
And so we kind of started looking into it on our own. And, at first it was tricky. It was reaching out to brands, and just saying, "Hey, is there any opportunity available?" And usually brands were kind of like, "Nope."
Yeah.
"I don't know who you are," or, whatever, or trying to tweet them and things like that. And it was hard in the beginning. And then slowly, I got on with Blog Her, which I'm not with anymore, but I was with them, and that kind of helped me to learn a little bit about PR companies versus
Yes.
just reaching out to the brands and those kinds of things. And so in the beginning, it was tricky. But moving forward, we've learned a lot because we had to do it on our own. We didn't have someone giving us inside secrets. And so I feel like that's where a lot of bloggers are at right now. They're like, "I know people are doing something because they're working with brands, but what's the secret?" So I guess there's a few things. Back then, it was kind of all over the place, and it was crossing your fingers and hoping that someone would reach out to you. And now, well, we went through a phase where we were very proactive about brands, and now we're to a point where they do just reach out to us, and we don't do a lot of reaching out to them. But everything's a process, and it's
Yes.
okay to start in the beginning
Yes.
and to not be big and huge yet. In fact, that's the best place you can be because you're learning who you are as a blogger and you're working towards something. You don't want all the success at first. You want
Yeah.
you want to find out a little bit about what makes you happy in the blog world and what doesn't.
Yeah, because I think it would be easy to put the cart before the horse where you are then catering to these brands and forgetting about your audience. And that would be not a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to let yourself feel okay. You know, it's like growing up. When I was younger, I always couldn't wait to be in college, and then I couldn't wait to be married and couldn't wait to have kids. And now looking back, I'm like, man, I should have just enjoyed the stage I was at.
Yes.
And I think bloggers need to be okay with that. Be okay with where you're at and working towards something new. That's kind of how you need to think of brand work.
I sometimes think about that with a brownie too. I love brownies. And so like sometimes it's like the anticipation of eating the brownie is really good. And then you eat the brownie and it's all gone, you know? So it's like, you know, sometimes it's just like leading up to that feels really good. So why not enjoy that part of it as well?
Exactly.
Okay. So I think I heard you say basically, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but there could be like 3 ways of working with brands. One would be through PR companies. Another would be being a part of these networks where, you know, like Tap Influence or things like that, where they work with brands. They're kind of like a third middleman with working with brands.
Yeah.
And then there's also direct access where you're, you know, directly working with brands.
Yep, exactly. So I think when you're starting out, if you don't mind me jumping into it.
Please, yes, let's do it.
So when you're starting out, I think you do have to think of it like that. Think of the 3 different ways that you can work with brands. First of all, think about what your strengths are on the blog. I'm working really hard on our photography, but, you know, if you rewind back to that situation where I was feeling kind of low about things, Cade said, listen, we might not have all these contacts reaching out. We might not be perfect at photography, but we know we're going to develop a recipe that's ours. We're not going to just steal it off someone else's site or anything. We know that we're going to be authentic in our writing, and we know that our readers care about who we are. So let's focus on that. So that was our strengths. Our strengths were that we were going to take the time to do a darn good job. And I wish I could say that to bloggers everywhere. This is not just about making money. If it is, then eventually this is all going to crumble for you. Instead, you need to care about the product you're putting out there and your voice. And so it's not just about getting brand work. It's about pleasing the brand and pleasing your readers and doing the best job that you can. So figure out what your strengths are. And then right now, if you're just starting out, be proactive. Get on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and be commenting on the things that the brands are sharing, and be commenting on things that other bloggers are doing for brands, because that helps you to be visible. And you're starting out. You have to be a little bit willing to take a little bit less in the beginning. And I'm all for making more money and, you know, bringing in more income, but everything comes in a phase. And so in the beginning, sometimes I would say, hey, such and such brand, I'm creating such and such recipe. Would you be willing to send me product? And I'll be sure to mention you on the site. And I didn't do it very often, but if there was someone that I really wanted to work with, and I saw that they were working with others, so there was potential there for it to turn into something, then I was willing to reach out and be like, as authentic as I could. I'm already creating a recipe that would be perfect for you and my readers would love. Could I use your product to do the testing? And they'd write back and most often say yes. I mean, it's just product. So I was like a dream. They didn't have to pay me. And then I would do a really good job on the blog post and I would promote the heck out of it. And then I would follow up. Hey, thank you so much. That was really well received. Here's an example of a comment or an email or whatever that I received, you know, someone that loved it. If there's any opportunities in the future, I'd really love to work together. So we kind of took that approach. Other times we would just, you know, write them and say, hey, we did this in the past and just wanted to give you a heads up or whatever. But being as out there as you can, communicating in an authentic way, and, you know, helping to push their own messaging so that they can see that you're worth the time. The more you're out there, the better. And then going off of that, you know, none of us want to work for free. We all know that this is our income and we get that. But in the beginning, you know, you just kind of have to be a little bit humble and willing to take a little bit more that maybe doesn't pay as much, or maybe sometimes doesn't pay at all, and not very often, but just occasionally, and then follow up with them and stay on track with things that they're doing,
You know,
and try to be a part.
another thing I love about that is that I think we sometimes assume that brands know how this works, and I don't think that they always do. So you may be reaching out to a brand. I mean, obviously some brands have worked with a lot of bloggers, but some have not. And so this could be a part of educating them as well.
Exactly. You never know. And that's why we kind of like to pay attention to who's working with who,
Yes.
if we notice that a whole bunch of bloggers seem to be working on a campaign with someone, first of all, we remembered, okay, their campaign is probably full because they have all these ambassadors right now.
Yes.
However, they're clearly working with bloggers, and so we just want to make contact. Sometimes it was, going out and doing conferences so that we could be visible with other bloggers and we could be visible with the brands and kind of put our name out there. And in the beginning, it really just is about being shown. So if you work with 3 brands over, a month and a half's time, and you didn't make anything from them, but they're retweeting that you did this post for them, and they're sharing it on their Instagram account or whatever, other brands are watching that, and they see that
Yes.
you're out there and you're working, and they have no idea that you're not getting paid, or they have no
Right.
idea that you're getting paid a small amount. They just see that you are desirable, and that speaks a lot in this world. They have no idea what's going on. You kind of fake it till you make it.
That's interesting. Just how we see other bloggers that are part of campaigns, brands see other brands that are working with bloggers. That's a really good point.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you have to sacrifice a little. And I'm obviously a fan of, as soon as things start moving for you, start charging or start charging more or whatever. But you want to be as visible as possible.
Yes, I think those are great tips for getting started in working with brands. And another thing to add to that would be not to be afraid of hearing no. So when you reach out to a brand, they may respond with a no, and that's okay. Just keep going.
Exactly. It's all a numbers game. A no is just one step closer to a yes.
Yes. I have all these analogies. It's like when you're playing soccer, you gotta kick it at the goal every now. You're gonna miss, but every now and then you're gonna make it in.
Exactly. You just got to keep kicking.
Just keep kicking. I like it. Okay, so I think I heard you say that now you're doing things a little bit differently, and it had to do with how much you value what you're bringing to the table. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so, as things kind of started moving along and we started getting reached out to more, and, we were getting a little bit busier, then we were talking one night about what to charge and how to charge, and we were feeling stressed with how much work we had going on and not feeling like we were, if we have all this work, why aren't we making more?
Yeah.
And I was feeling a little guilty, like, gosh, can I even charge more? I feel like I'm already charging so much just to be cooking dinner. Like, this is
Yes.
silly. And Cade, in his wise ways, he's always my go-to. He was like, listen, and I've told this to a few bloggers, so I apologize for repeating, but he's like, these brands could be paying someone hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars to create an ad for TV, which, 99% of the public is going to fast forward past anyway. Or they can be putting an ad up in a grocery store that most people aren't going to pay attention to. Or they can pay you a chunk of money that your readers are going to make what you say to make. And even if only half of them do it, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, but my numbers aren't anything compared to so-and-so's or whatever. And he was like, okay, again, we're going to be authentic, so we're bringing good quality content. And then he made a good point. Picture everybody that's in your stats. So let's say a blogger is just starting out and they're only at 50,000 page views or 100,000 page views a month. He was like, put all those people in a room and now stand up in front of them. He's like, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And even if only half of those people made your recipe and bought that brand's product, that is a lot of people. So that kind of switched everything for us. I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, we are helping these brands get their stuff out to a whole chunk of the population, and that's worth some money. And so we started upping our rates and, saying, okay, we'll do this, this, and this for this price. And if you want partial rights, the price increases to such and such. And if you want full rights, it increases again. And it took some practice, but we got strict about it. We were like, okay, if they come back and say, oh, we just can't do that, then what's our answer going to be? So now we have a set rate. We have a rate that we won't go below. So if we are willing to bring our price down a little, we'll only go down to a specific number. And if it's below that number, then we don't feel bad about saying, that's not going to work out for us. And if we do say that, then we say, oh my goodness, we absolutely love your brand. We can see ourselves making such and such, giving an idea of a recipe for the future. We know our readers would love you. So bummed that budget isn't going to work out this time, but we are looking forward to you getting in touch in the future and can't wait to work together. So we leave on a really positive note.
Right.
But what that says to the brand is we're serious and we're worth it. And then just like before, they see us working with all these other brands and they have to assume that it's for that price that we stated in the beginning. And so it really just makes us desirable. It doesn't make us get less stuff coming forward. It says to the brand, oh, they're really worth it. And all these other brands are working with them. So next time we have budget, let's reach out to them first.
Right.
So we made some changes and we got a little bit more of a backbone and stood our ground. And and then when, every 6 months or a year, we up our rates again. And if, it's a busy time of year or if we're getting a whole lot of brands writing in and we're a little bit overwhelmed with how many, then we up our rates, because if the demand is there, then our price is going to increase.
And so then you're working actually with fewer brands, but you're doing
much fewer, right?
You're getting more money per brand and also a higher quality, post,
exactly.
I guess. So that feels really good. Yeah.
We can take our time. We don't have to be stressed about hurrying to get 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever posts out in a month. Instead, we can do 2 to 4 posts a month and kind of be flexible with things.
And can you explain for everybody the difference between the two different rights that you were talking about?
Yeah, so for us, and I don't know if this is what all bloggers consider, but for us, if someone wants partial rights, then we give up the right for them to use the photo. We don't ever do recipe for partial rights. Photos and the link to our site and a little blurb from us. And they can promote that on social media. They can promote that on their site. But they don't get to do it in print and they don't get to have the full recipe posted anywhere or even the ingredients for partial rights. Partial rights is purely just using our photo with a link back to us. And they can promote that however they want, not just during our campaign. So, and then if full rights is they have the right to use the photo and the recipe however they want to. And we charge more than double, usually about triple what our normal rate is for that.
That makes sense.
But they could put it on a cereal box and make money for a long time off our photo. So we feel like it's worth it to charge much more because they have it forever. And eventually we start to kind of lose traffic. If a brand is smart and they put it up on their website as their own recipe, then people start going there for it instead of us. And so if I'm going to eventually lose a little money from ads, then I want to make up for it in full rights.
Right. And then are you also putting anything on your, when a brand has bought something on full rights, are you also then putting something on your site, or they own the photo, so it's there at that point, they've bought the recipe, it's theirs?
We have never given up full rights in the way that we have to pull it from our site or send our readers from our site. The clause always states that they have full rights, but that we get to leave the content remaining on our site.
I see.
And we do that multiple times a year, that we sell off full rights. But we've just become really strict with everything. And so we love selling full rights. That's always a nice paycheck.
Yes, I think so.
But we do always keep it on our site. We don't want to lose it. So
Okay, so I have a question for you. Do you think this is like a chicken and the egg story where do you find your value in working with brands first, or do you find your value in working with your audience first? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that you discovered your value and you use that in working with brands. But what I'm curious about is if discovering your value also impacts the way you work with your audience.
I think it's kind of both. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
totally chicken and the egg.
Yeah. I could see where if somebody's struggling to grow their audience, finding your value and what you bring to your audience would probably be a huge, discovery.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it kind of goes back and forth. Even years down the road, all of a sudden you find yourself going, okay, wait, now who are we again? What did we want to be doing with this blog?
Yeah.
Or through working with these brands, we've kind of discovered this new passion. And so we kind of go for that. And it's always this ongoing process. And I guess each individual blogger finds it themselves. But for us, we feel like take a step back, do it because you love it. Blogging has become so known for making money at home that I think a lot of people jumped in just because they're like, hey, I could bring in extra money. And they don't necessarily have the passion behind it. So I'm always a fan of starting from yourself and figuring out where the value of everything is. But
What is
I
your
don't know.
passion and what you bring into the
What's your
table?
passion?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just curious, based on, your experience in talking with other bloggers, what do you think is the main thing that we struggle with? I mean, why do we struggle with feeling valuable when we're negotiating with brands?
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't even. It's just all insecurities. It's
Yeah.
am I good enough? Is my content good enough? Is my readership good enough? I think a lot of people are worried that they'll ask for a certain price, and then that blog post won't do very well or something, and they'll have to be filled with all this guilt. But
Yeah.
I guess I don't see it that way. I mean, my content's going to live forever on this website
Yeah.
that, in 5 years, someone could all of a sudden discover this green smoothie recipe that I made for someone and it could take off all over again. And yay for that brand that all of a sudden they're getting visibility again. And so I see it as it could happen now or it could happen later, but either way, that brand has real estate on my blog. And so that's worth something. It's just all insecurities. And
Yes.
I think if we were more open and talking about these things as bloggers, instead of always trying to look like we're doing just fine or our blog's bigger than it is or, whatever, I think if we were just more open and collaborative, those insecurities would start to go away. Listen, I started charging, a good rate for things before I had even hit 100,000 and before I had even hit 1 million page views. Like, it started before that because I felt that I was worth it and I knew I was willing to take the time to do it. And so every blogger just needs to go, you know what? I'm doing really cool things. I'm
Yes.
making up a recipe and I'm wearing 50 different hats to do it and to put this blog post up there. And this is paying off to have these brands come to me. And so
I
I'm
think you
going to
raised
be
such a great
confident.
point about sometimes the problem I think is with the playing field because like I have an MBA and I actually, I have studied the art of negotiation and how to do it and but yet for some reason I think some of those insecurities come about because you don't feel stable on the playing field. You don't know, am I charging too much or am I charging because we don't really have a good feel for how much people charge for working with different brands. I mean, there's a lot of variables at play.
Right, right. And we're always the type of people that we're worried that, we're not good enough or our brand isn't good enough or whatever. And so it really just comes down to playing with numbers, start off at a certain price. And
Yes.
if brands are starting to come in, let yourself feel good about that in a humble way. We don't need any more
Yes.
I'm a celebrity bloggers, but but let yourself feel good about that and
Yeah.
then see where things go. If things are doing well, then go ahead and raise your rates. And what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to tell you no. That's fine. It doesn't work for right now. That's not a personal reflection of you. They just have a budget that they have to work with, or they have certain guidelines, for certain campaigns. We need this to this. It's not a reflection of you at all. They're not saying no to you. They're just saying not right now. And
I have a
so,
question for you, Carrian. Do you think there's a chance that if you're not hearing no every now and then, your rates are not high enough?
I mean, that's,
It's just
oh,
a thought. In other words, I heard somebody say if you're not getting rejected every now and then, you're not pushing enough. So I was just wondering if maybe that applies to your
I,
rates as well.
I a little bit think that. We don't hear a lot of no's, but I don't know. I guess it depends. At times, if you're not hearing a lot of no's and you're getting a ton of brands contacting you and you're very busy, then yes, raise your rates. But if you're not hearing a lot of no's, but you're also getting like one thing here, one thing there, then no, I don't think it necessarily works in that case. It just all
Right.
depends. How busy are you? If you're really busy, then that's
Ah,
a different story than if you're
yes.
not, you know?
Again, there's some variables at play here.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what gave me a good guideline is when Cade found the Blog Her Network and we started with them, he had a sign up on that, and we kind of said, okay, the network helps put you out there. They help bring brands into you, which is a great step. You know, we get a lot through tap influence these days, and that keeps us incredibly busy. We tell a lot of those ones no because we just can't take it on. But it gives you visibility, but it also helps you get an idea of numbers. So we knew, okay, the network's going to take a chunk of this, and these PR companies are taking a chunk. So
Yes.
if they're offering me a post for such and such, then on my own, I want that rate to be much higher than what a network would pay me. So if you're working with a network right now and they're saying, well, we'll give you $300 to talk about some strawberries, then you should be like, okay, then I'm going to charge a good $1,000 when people email me directly. You want to be much higher because it's just you and the PR company or you and the brand, and there's not another middle person in there.
Do you think there's more that you have to deliver as a result of working directly with the brand?
No, I have the same standard no matter what. Is that
Okay.
what you mean?
Well, no, I'm just wondering, like, what is it that the PR or the network brings to the table that is attractive to the brand? I mean, I guess I imagine the PR company might be providing additional stats. That's the only thing I can think of, but
Yeah, I think it's just that they're doing a
hand
lot of the
holding.
filtering. Yeah,
Yes.
they're doing a lot of the filtering. They'll say, "Okay, now you do this and we'll report back and we'll take care of all that middleman stuff. We'll find the bloggers. We'll make sure they're on
Oh,
top of things." I think they're thinking of it like that. And
yeah.
I mean, I can do it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
So I think what I'm hearing you say then is that when you're new to working with brands, or even when you're more experienced, using organizations or networks like Tap Influence, or I think there's a lot of them out there. I've got a list, Blog Meets Brand. There's so many.
Yeah, exactly.
So being a member of those is a great way of getting started. It's a great way of understanding which brands are working with bloggers and about the steps involved. And then
Right.
once you start feeling a little more comfortable with that, then going ahead and reaching out to brands individually is a great next step.
Right. And really, people need to remember these PR companies, they take on different people all the time. These PR agents leave and go to other places, and your name carries on. And so, you know, even just getting in with one PR agency like Weber Shandwick, we've worked with them a whole bunch. Weber, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's hard when you just read all these things online. Never
I
get
know.
it. Anyway, we've worked with them, on one campaign years and years ago, and we continue to work with them until this day. We're working with McCormick and all these, the Beef Council and all these different things just because of one person we worked with years ago. And so it's so beneficial to get in with these people and to please them and to do your job right. We are never late. We have never missed a deadline. In fact, we have pretty much always been early. We always get it done ahead of time and we don't make anyone wait on us. And that says a lot to these PR companies. They know they can count on us. They know we're not going to be whiny or complaining or demand things. And
Yes.
so our name is good to them, and they're willing to pass us on when other brands come along or when they move to another agency. They're willing to say, hey, I worked with them before. And so I don't know, I like the networks for that.
It's so easy to let yourself fall into negativity and be, complaining about, oh, I can't believe the brand didn't send me the product, or, you can just fall into that area of negativity. And I think what I'm hearing you say is to try to take the high road and be professional.
Exactly. Always be professional. And that really is my thing with all of this, is that we all want to make money. Yes, we know that free product does not pay our mortgage. We know all of that. But,
Right.
either you're going to be the type of person that breathes life into everything, or you're going to be holding everyone back and sucking the air out of everyone. And I don't live like that. And neither does Kate. And we feel like if we're humble and we just do the best job that we can do, then that speaks, and that that brings in new things for us. We can't be exhausting. We aren't celebrities. We're just doing a good job. That's what we're doing. We're worth it, and we are working hard, and we know that we wear a lot of hats as bloggers, but just stay humble and remember that these people are trying to do their jobs too, and they have a budget to work with.
I loved what you said at the beginning too. You talked about how you followed up after a campaign, or even if it didn't turn into a campaign, you follow up, and just say,
Always.
Really appreciated the opportunity to communicate with you or work with you, whatever happened.
Yep, always, always, always. We always follow up with everything that comes through to us, and whether we end up working with them or not, we hold on to their information. And oftentimes, we'll reach out even months later and we'll say, hey, we've got this idea. Is anything going on in the future that you guys would like to work together on? And I mean, more often than not, they'll be like, well, actually, I do have something coming up the next couple months. I'll reach back out. Or we have something right now. Do you want to be a part of it? And, you're saving them time that they don't have to look for you. And I don't know. I just think kindness and humility go a long way in this world.
Oh, and it's such a great reminder, because it is easy, I think, sometimes to forget about those two very important qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want one more question, and that is, like, if you know somebody who is trying to grow their audience, what would be one tip you would share with them?
Collaborate. Collaborate on everything. If you're trying to grow your audience, if you're trying to grow your brand work, whatever it is, collaborate with others. Keep in mind that bloggers should be your best friends, your allies. They're not your competition. Find out what they're doing that works for them. Be open yourself and be willing to share things, share each other's content. I don't just mean like these secret Facebook groups and things like that. I mean, I was talking with Becky from the Cookie Rookie a while ago, and we were just talking about how nice it is to be able to post something on our blog and say, with this chicken, we ended up having such and such for dessert from so-and-so's website, and it turned out amazing. And, just in natural ways to talk about each other and collaborate with one another. And that's what I think has paid off.
Yes. That is such a nice way of paying compliment to another blogger out there too. If you try their recipe, you might not mention it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to lose any readers by talking about someone else, ever. They just think you're more authentic. So
that's beautiful. Okay, I lied. I actually have these fun questions I like to ask at the end of the interview, and these are just quick. So,
okay. Cool.
What's one food item you can't live without?
One?
Yes.
Oh, one food item. Cheese.
Do you have a favorite kind of cheese?
On everything. I love, I love salty Parmesan, or just like a good fresh mozzarella. And I know those are so basic, but throw it on anything and I'm always happy.
It turns something simple into something really nice, huh?
Yeah, I'm more cheese than I am chocolate, and I still adore my chocolate, but I love the savory.
That's great. Okay, so what's the favorite app on your phone?
Favorite app?
Yes.
I am like, I'm not an app. I mean, I love Instagram, I guess.
That's an app.
Our kids love the helium booth, if you've heard of that one.
What is that? Makes your voice sound like helium?
It makes your voice in all these different, like, chipmunks, or makes your face look funny or whatever. It's kind of like Snapchat, but it's just a helium booth. It doesn't go out
to the public. I love that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
We just get silly and do that with each other.
That's too cool. I'm going to have to check that out because that sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any time for TV? And if so, do you have a favorite show you can share?
Oh, I think we're the only people in the world that don't watch much TV. But when we do, we're diehard Fixer Upper fans.
I love that show. Yes.
Who doesn't, right? Everyone wants to be them. They're so cute. I love how they play off of each other. I think they're very respectful of one another.
Yes, you can tell they really love each other, and I love that in a couple.
Yeah, I do too. We love that show. We just watched it last night.
It's on Netflix now, so every now and then I've been watching it too. I mean, we don't have cable, but
us either. We just watch it on Netflix, so we're going slow because once it's gone, we have to wait for another season to be added.
Yes, and then a couple times a year we go visit Sean's parents, and they have cable. So then it's like I'm like a couch potato. I'm like on
like
the
a
TV,
binge session.
Yes, watching Fixer Upper.
Oh, that's funny.
Great show. So, how can people find you online?
So you can go to our site, ohsweetbasil.com. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook are all under @ohsweetbasil.
Wonderful.
So everything's there.
Carrian, thanks so much for talking with me. I had a wonderful time.
Oh, me too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much to Carrian Cheney for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to buy your tickets to the conference, learn more about today's show, and you can sign up for our newsletter to get the latest on all things food blogging. Tune in next week as I talk with Sue B. Zimmerman about tips for Instagram success. You've probably seen Sue on the Social Media Marketing Podcast or Creative Live or a number of other places. She's always talking about Instagram and how to up your game. Sue shares some great ideas on how to grow your Instagram. It's great stuff, and I'm looking forward to sharing that interview with you soon. I hope you're loving the Chopped Podcast. You can show your support for this show by leaving a review on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also share about the show on social media, and you can leave a link on your own blog or podcast. All of these things make a great difference, and I appreciate every one of them. I hope you know you inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.